G'day. I suppose I could talk to you endlessly about a certain event that's happening on the other side of the world and the impact that it's having on most countries, but honestly, there's enough YouTube videos and other people talking about it, so I don't need to. So tonight's video, apparently, based on M St G's comments, is about a paddock. What's a paddock? It's actually an interesting thing because I had a 5-hour conversation with someone over the weekend, and it was one of those conversations that when you initialize it, you've got it sort of going through your head that it's only going to last for maybe half an hour, maybe an hour, but it ends up turning into something completely different, and all range of topics are talked about. One of which, and it sort of goes on from kind of what I was saying last night, is that I've started noticing a lot of things. And weirdly enough for me, I just don't trust anything anymore. I don't really trust the sky. I don't really trust the bush to a certain extent, and I love that place, trust me, I do. But it kind of makes you start looking at things differently, I suppose, and it comes down to words like, okay, this whole thing started with a tree. Now, weirdly enough, what is a tree? What is that word? To a certain extent, we all sort of grow up like most, and everything we learn from a very, very young age tends to come from our parents. Now, where did they learn it from? Well, they learned it from their parents, and so on and so forth down the road. But at what point did we start calling what we call trees a tree? And it's a bit like the word paddock. I know what a paddock is, but clearly it doesn't converse to what Americans and maybe other people around the globe think of what a paddock is. It's a bit like when I talk about a stovey pole. And to be brutally honest, unless you live anywhere other than in South Australia, most people have absolutely no idea what a stovey pole is. Stovey pole, by the way, is a power pole. In South Australia, they started making them out of I-beams with concrete sort of in the middle, and mainly because of the termites, because they were just better than the timber ones, and they carry the power lines. And you see them on every residential street in Australia, no matter whether you live in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, Northern Territory, doesn't matter, they're all the same. I know in a lot of new subdivisions, a lot of the power is actually run underground. I draw houses for a living, so I kind of know that. And I'm sure in some parts of America, they're all underground, so you don't actually see power poles, you don't see what I call stovey poles. So it comes back to sort of simple things like that, like we call it tomato sauce, because that's what it is. I don't know where they got the word ketchup from, because it's tomato sauce. Unless it's something different. It's made of tomato, salt, a few other ingredients, and it's a sauce. So, there are different ways of actually using the English language, and even some words in England compared to Australia. I was having a conversation with someone today, what are the servos selling fuel for? And most Americans are going, what's a servo? It's short for service station. I don't know, I guess you call them gas stations, and some people call them petrol stations, but we call them servos. Bit like Macca's, you know, not that I've had Macca's for years, but Macca's is McDonald's, but most Australians call it Macca's. It's just what we call it. So a paddock is basically an open field that's been fenced, and it is utilised for either growing crops, breeding sheep, cattle, goats, I don't know, whatever you happen to want to do it. We tend to have a lot bigger paddocks. Most of the paddocks on the farm that I go to tend to have a couple of gates. You know, the old adage, if the gate's open, leave it open. If the gate's closed, close it behind you. Fairly simple, but yeah, that's what a paddock is. I don't think it gets much more confusing than that. I suppose you guys have got pastures or fields, but these just happen to be fenced on all four sides. They've got gates in them, and they're used for farming. You know, otherwise we've got deserts. You know, we've got, I don't know, I mean, they're just called paddocks, really. So yeah, it comes back to the words and their meaning to you. We just automatically assume that everyone knows what we're talking about. But it comes back to the word tree. I mean, who's to say that, okay, it's called a tree in Australia, it's called a tree in most Western countries, but who's to say that somebody in some other country around this world doesn't call it a tree? It's called something else. Just because we call it something and assume that everybody else knows what that means doesn't necessarily mean that's true. So, you know, thus the confusion between what's a paddock. And, you know, you start looking at things differently. You know, what else could it be called? I mean, you're sitting there scratching your head going, am I dumb, or I'm supposed to know this? Or, you know, no, you're not. No. It's just that we're all different. Simple. You know, some people follow God. Some people follow Muhammad. Some people follow Buddha. Doesn't mean they're mean people. You know, most people get up in the morning, they go and do their morning duty, and then they gradually get ready and they might have some breakfast. I don't know, some people might not even eat first thing in the morning. But, you know, they get their day started. You know, they've got their family, they've got their kids, they've got their partners, wives, whatever, husbands, boyfriends, girlfriends, you know, you name it. We're all not really that much different. All we really want is a roof over our head so that the rain doesn't get in and, you know, the stinking hot sun doesn't burn us. You know, we just want to be comfortable. We just want to live our lives. You know, it's not really that complicated, I wouldn't have thought. But these days, we tend to get boxed, put in a box. And it kind of reminds me of that comedy video, you know, where, you know, what's in a man's head? You know, it's made up of boxes. And what's in a female's head? Well, there's just all these wires and it's bzz, bzz. I mean, most of us have seen the video and most of us can just have a laugh because it's true. You know, so this idea of a tree, what is a tree? You know, you start thinking maybe a lot more deeper about certain things, and you start, you know, I suppose it goes along with the whole idea that you just question everything. Just because somebody says it's not true doesn't mean you shouldn't look at it and look at both sides. You know, if you're to make an informed decision, you've got to look at the side that you don't want to look at. But the question is, why have you been told not to look at it? Hmm? I mean, all the algorithms, once you start looking at something, tend to guide you down one track. You know, it might not be the track that you want to go down, but you suddenly realise 6 months later you're watching the same video because it happens to agree with you. And then you start thinking, well, hang on a sec, I'm not a bloody robot, I'm not a dog on a leash. I'm allowed to look at the other things. But strangely enough, half the time, the algorithm won't actually let you look at the other things. You know, it doesn't want you, it wants you in a box. And that's the problem. It starts putting everyone in a box. You're this religion and therefore you're bad. You're this religion, therefore you're good. You're this religion and maybe we might be able to get along with you, but probably not. And it's a bit like the politics, you know, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. I mean, just because there's only two choices, where's the third? You know, I don't want to be in either one of those boxes, so why can't I pick something else? You know, why are you shoved in a box and you're told to be like that? And because after a while, your belief gets so strong about that choice. You think you've made it, but you haven't. Under any circumstances, you haven't made that choice. You've been told that that's what you're meant to go with. And maybe it started with a video that just happened to, you know, tickle your fancy. And then all of a sudden the algorithm thought, aha, I'm going to just shove all this stuff in front of you. And after a while, you're going, actually, I'm starting to believe this guy. And then all of a sudden, the other side videos popped up and they're saying something you don't like. And you go, I don't like that guy. I rather this side here. And you honestly believe it's your choice that got you there. And it wasn't. Why is there only two choices in America? Why is there not 3 or 4 or 5? Why do you have to be in one box? You don't. And it's up to you to make the choice to look elsewhere, to make a better decision about the people around you, because as soon as you get away from that box, you realise that everyone's the same. They're no different to you. They all get out of bed. You know, they all go to the toilet first thing in the morning. They all turn the kettle on in the morning. They all get their kids to school ready. Nothing changes. It's just that their mindset has been changed. And it's a bit like the tree. Who says it's called a tree? Just because everyone says it's called a tree doesn't mean it's called a tree. And it's a pity the tree can't talk. I'll leave you with that one. Funny how my mind works, isn't it? Have a good night.